Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first edition of the Furry Valley Podcast. My name is Simba, and I will be your host today. Thank you to our live audience for coming along to listen in. We'll be addressing some of the questions you raised during the course of the podcast. Today, I'm joined by community members and admins Cinnabunny and Jaraah to discuss how the furry fandom and video games cross over and interact. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great.
I'm doing fine.
Good. You both sound enthusiastic. I'd like to get us started by just asking each of you a bit about your history as a furry, as a gamer, and how you feel those two paths have crossed or interacted with one another. Let's start with you, Jaraah.
Oh, I've been a furry for probably officially about 13, 14 years now. I've been gaming ever since a little kid, obviously, though, so... As far as interactions, well, being part of the furry community has definitely helped me find a lot more people to play games with, so that's definitely been a very positive experience for me.
Cool. And how about you, Cinnabunny?
Well, I've been a furry for about 5 years. I've been gaming similar to Jaraah as long as I can remember, really. Started with Nintendo, now I'm at PC. Doing a lot better on that.
Cool. And why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about your personas and what games you're interested in?
I could go first.
Go ahead, yeah.
So I am, as the name would imply, a bunny. And the games that I have interest in are pretty span across any genre, really. I don't stick to one genre. I don't really stick to one thing. I'll play indie. I'll play AAA. I play across the board, really.
Do you tend to play more multiplayer or single player?
More multiplayer.
Okay.
I don't as much go for the single player experiences just because a lot of times I'll experience hiccups. I'll lose interest in some of the best single player games.
Okay. And for those of you who don't know, Cinnabunny is one of our Rainbow Six and Super Smash Bros. Admins. How about you, Jaraah? Do you want to tell us a bit about your persona and sort of what games you're interested in?
Well, my persona is usually a large Arctic wolf. It's kind of funny, considering the fact I don't actually like the cold. As far as games, I used to play a lot of single-player games, like racing games and a lot of Halo games. But I kind of started getting more into the social aspect of multiplayer games and stuff like that. So, because I can enjoy games more when I have friends with me.
Cool, so it's the social aspect, I see. And for those who don't know, Jaraah is one of our RuneScape 3 admins, and he also takes care of our Cards Against Humanity section. So, obviously we have the furry fandom, which we're all part of here, but many people are now viewing the video gaming community almost as a fandom in itself. In what ways do you think that the two fandoms are similar, Jaraah?
Well, they both have groups of people who are evidently, what's the word I'm looking for? Have very strong feelings towards each group.
They're very passionate for that group.
Very passionate, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
You have people who are very passionate about particular games like Fallout or Final Fantasy. You have like Monster Hunter and the people who love the self-abuse of the the Dark Souls, or whatever it's called. And of course, you have a bunch of furries who are pretty much similar. They enjoy certain aspects of the fandom, such as going to every con they possibly can and stuff like that.
Yeah, so you've got like the suitors and the artists, and then I guess the furry gamers, which many of us are, and so forth, I suppose. In what ways do you think the two fandoms or communities are different, Cinnabunny?
I think that they are similar in most ways. When it comes down to it, you've got people that promote a lot of the media that goes around, whether it be the art, whether it be the conventions and any other types of community related things that swell in either furry or gaming community. It just appears in different forms, whereas in the gaming community you'll see it as indie developers instead of artists that make more humble commissions, and then you've got AAA titles that more so compare to more popular artists, your obvious Valve and the like.
Yeah, and I suppose fursuit producers as well sell their content
Absolutely.
for a lot of money. That's sort of analogous in many ways, I suppose. Okay, so next thing I'd like to discuss with you. In the League of Legends World Championships, I don't know if you guys are into it, but in 2017, after losing to a rival team, Reckless from Fnatic stayed on stage on his own in tears of what could have been. When he lost, it was heartbreaking. It had such an impact on me personally, having experienced something quite similar, that I reached out to him via his agent, became friends with him towards the end of 2017. And it's clear, I think, from the footage is on YouTube, you can go and watch it. It's clear from that we have so much empathy, and the crowd had so much respect for someone who dedicated himself to his craft, as Reckless does, or like all these professional esports players do. But contrarily, imagine a person equally dedicated to furry and furry fandom in an analogous sort of situation. It's difficult to imagine the public giving them a reaction of much other than thinking, they're some sort of weird loser, certainly not something positive. So, I guess my next question is for full-on furry lifestylers who really embrace and live as a furry, just as much as Reckless and other professional gamers live as video gamers. What do you think needs to happen in order for the public to view that kind of intensity of being a furry more positively and more supportively?
Whew, that is a pretty big one.
Yeah.
I'd have to say a major start would just have to be the time and patience that has to come with a furry community, because just like any other major community interest of any sort, it won't become something people normally look at as healthy, or whatever people look at the furry community and see or think,
So
until
you think it's
enough
more of an
time passes.
exposure thing?
I think it's more of an exposure thing, and it's just the thing that as more people hear about it, they'll have their opposition towards it, and then eventually more and more people will just be accepted of it, even if they disagree with it, even if they think it's weird, they'll just be normal to it.
And that's an interesting point. But the furry fandom has been around in some form or other for many years, at least 20 years, fairly well established. Whereas the professional esports scene, really only the past 10 years has it kicked off. Yet professional gamers, I would say, were more respected by society, and certainly more, not thought of as losers when they dedicate themselves like that, as much as furries would be. Do you think it's something more than that? Jaraah, perhaps, if you have anything to chime in with?
There's a lot of differences between gamers and furries in some regards, but whereas gamers are more generally accepted amongst most of the population,
Yeah.
furries aren't so much. So there's a big difference in that regard.
So you think it's not so much of a time-based thing, but more of a how much, I suppose, percentage of people within the world have heard of furry and are familiar enough with furry, whereas everyone's played a game, I suppose, at some point or other. Everyone's at least a bit familiar with that.
Pretty much. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's played games, at least even board games or card games with like their parents when they were a kid or something like that. But furries, I'm still surprised by how many people I bump into that don't have a clue what they are.
Yeah. I think it's...
I mean, I've literally showed my coworkers pictures of my city and they didn't know what the heck it was.
I think a lot of people just suppose it's a mascot type thing, like at sports matches. I guess that's the closest they will have come to it, unless they spend at least a little bit of time on the internet, I guess. Obviously, there's the CSI show and various media interviews, but there's a lot more media online, of course.
Yeah, and one thing I would like to add is that even though the esports community hasn't been in the spotlight for the longest time, it's probably been roughly around underground since only a little after the furry fandom got its start. And even if you're looking back further than that, you're looking at games back on, early PlayStation, stuff like Tomb Raider, where people would dedicate hundreds and hundreds of hours just to find every little secret within games like that. And I think they treated that to a similar extent as esports to compare. And I think roughly enough that it's evidence enough to say that the gaming community has had more time to be exposed to the world.
Yeah, it's
There's us.
Go ahead, Jaraah.
There's also the competitive nature of it that draws a lot of attention to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I guess whether you're a gamer or not, you can familiarize and empathize with the competitive nature of the games, because we all compete with something or other. We all have goals and things that we want to excel in.
And
thinking of older games, I recently came across on YouTube this thing called speedrunning, where people would play Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow games from the 90s, and they just try to do it as fast as possible. It's a fascinating concept I'd never heard of before. So I guess I'm not sure whether you would call that esports, but certainly a precursor to it, I suppose.
Absolutely. Speedrunning is definitely just as competitive a community as esports is, considering the fact that there are some world records in speedrunning that, in fact, in just the last year and a half, because I actually follow it a little bit in my free time, have been broken and have been like 20-year standing records.
Okay.
And things like that kind of bridge the gap. But what I was gonna say, as far as the contrast, the two communities again, was that I think a lot of the opposition towards the furry community comes in the fact that being a furry is a lot more tied to a identity more than gaming is, because when you see someone that games, they play video games, but they don't really have a character. They don't really have like someone that or an online persona as much as the furry community has it. So I think that's probably why it might take a little bit more time for people to adapt to the idea.
So you think that people find it stranger that furries consider being a furry as their primary identity, whereas a gamer would not tend to consider being a gamer as his or her primary identity?
Well, I mean, I think both of them consider that part of their primary identity.
Okay.
I just think that the gamer doesn't exactly have a persona in the
So you think it's
form
a
of a
case of being
character.
represented by a character that people don't like?
I think the fact that that character ends up being an animal-related thing,
Okay.
and a lot of time the tie goes back to a not safe for work theme.
So it's strange, a lack of understanding, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah, I see. Yes. Okay, so moving on, many of us furry gamers will have experienced hatred from non-furs in the gamer community. I've seen this from MOBAs that I play to RPGs, widespread. What, if anything, do you guys think can be done to potentially reconcile the two communities, given that, most gamers are a little bit outcast by society, most furries are certainly outcast by society? It feels like if we're in a shared space as mutual weirdos, if you'll excuse the expression, we should try to get on. But we don't see that. So what can we do about that, if anything?
I really can't think of any simple solution to that other than just trying to do things similar with each other to try to understand each other a little bit more.
So more integration.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
I think it goes down to a simple idea of a Venn diagram. You've got furries that are gamers, and you've got gamers that aren't furries. If you start with what's in common, you can kind of ease ties a little bit better, because when I started being a furry, I was still much more a gamer than anything, and most of my friends were gamers, and they knew I was a furry, and they ragged on me a bit. They had their little teasing. I had my things that I teased them for, and it was all in good fun. But I think making a primary thing when you're bridging the gap is starting with what's in common, and you can actually work pretty well through it that way.
Yeah, and in terms of familiarity, I suppose having more furries at the top of common esports that we see would be a good thing. I don't know as if we have any professional furry league players or Counter-Strike players or such, but that sort of thing I suppose would help in the long term. That's sort of do you have something to say, Cinnabunny?
Yes, so I mean there's the obvious examples of people like Sonic Fox, although he might not be the primary example that I'd like to use. There are several other examples in communities like Smash Bros. An esports player, I do not remember their name, actually uses their persona as their picture when they are about to go up for a match, and the Smash Bros. Esports community allowed them to use that in place of a actual IRL picture.
Wow,
And yes,
that's pretty cool.
and I think that that's a one huge step.
Is that Vip? I know Vip is one of our community members. He plays, I believe it's Smash professionally, but I don't know whether he is on like the main stages or such.
I can't say I remember
Okay.
what person it was.
All right. Well, I mean that actually leads us quite nicely into my next question, which is, after winning Best Esports Player at the Game Awards 2018, Sonic Fox, who you just mentioned, is a gamer who openly identifies as a furry. He went onto stage in his fursuit to give his acceptance speech. And then the speech was extremely polarizing, with many feeling love, many feeling hate towards Sonic Fox for what he said. As furries, we know all too well from the infamous CSI episode that not all publicity is good publicity. Do you feel that, although it's certainly the case there are plenty who supported Sonic Fox's speech, it could end up causing more hate between gamers and furries because it was controversial?
I haven't seen the speech, so I wouldn't know.
I have seen the acceptance speech, and I do completely feel that it is as polarizing as you stated that it was. And I don't think what really puts the nail in it is the speech itself, but the way that Sonic Fox presents himself on social media.
Okay.
Because a lot of the aftermath and a lot of the follow up to people's opposition is met with a lot more substance for people to
That
not be open
furries.
to accept it. Yeah,
I see,
because
yeah.
Sonic Fox is just trying to attack people, saying they're homophobic and this and that,
Yeah.
without letting people live their lives. People aren't going to let you live your own, and that's kind of what's going to have an effect on the rest of the community.
So you think it's that the speech was mostly fine, but the sort of PR handling afterwards was the messy part?
I think it was the messy part,
Okay.
because as I follow it, it just looks like it's going down and down.
Is it still ongoing? I admittedly haven't been keeping up with it. I know about the original speech and a little bit of what happened afterwards, but is it still ongoing? We're in January when we're recording this, January 2019.
Yeah, it looks like the turmoil is turning into more of a joking about the instance, about the fact that half of all of Fox's posts are "I'm gay," and that's almost the entire post in and of itself.
Right.
But I think that the fact that they're joking about it is hopefully going to put us past it, and hopefully things will just
Do you think
turn out even better.
Things will defuse by sort of trying to make them satirical to detract from the venom, I suppose?
Yeah, and then I think once we get back to a point where we were before the Sonic Fox social media stuff, I think it's going to actually go back to be even better than it originally was before that. I think it's just going to bounce back even better.
Yeah, history tends to be quite kind. The roughest moments tend to be, I suppose, as soon as something is done, and then after that, people prefer not to think about the negatives, I suppose. In the long term, they tend to fade more. Well, hopefully we'll see that, and the relationship will be more positive in the future. It's certainly a lot of exposure, that's for sure, for furry on such a large platform. Moving on now to a completely unrelated topic, I'd like to talk a little bit about furry as a target market for games producers. The furry fandom has an economy approximately as large as that of a small city. The first fully furry game, other than text-based sort of Telnet multi-user dungeons, was Furcadia, released in 1996. Since then, many companies have produced games to appeal either fully or mostly to the furry market. Perhaps one of the most hyped being Earth Eternal, which was announced in early 2007 and eventually released as an immediate flop, unfortunately, in the fall of 2009. With this history in mind, what do you think is some good advice that games producers should listen to in order to not repeat the failures of some other games aimed at an audience that is either entirely or primarily furry?
Well, as long as the game producers realize that although the furry community may be able to support small developers, overall it's going to be very difficult to live off of that. You have to branch out to a much larger society as a whole to really prosper and build upon what you're trying to do.
So you think it's a case that the furry economy is too small to support, say, a AAA game aimed primarily at furries at this point?
It seems like it might be fine for a smaller game or indie game, maybe even a startup game,
Mhm.
but probably not really for a big league game that take hundreds of producers to work on.
Yeah. What do you think, Cinnabunny?
I think I agree very much with what Jaraah said, and I think that there's a particular way that developers can do this really well, and as it has been done really well in the past. I think one of the prime examples I think of is the game Dust in Elysian Trail, where you see yourself as a character and you can tell it's anthropomorphic and you can tell a lot of the characters are anthropomorphic, but that comes far, far, far behind what the game itself is. And I think putting out a game that is more substance and game than furry is similar to the idea I said before, where by starting with what people have in common, they're going to be able to accept what they don't.
Yeah. So by having a game which has clearly very valid and mainstream, widespread appeal to gamers overall, you think that having furry as a backdrop is more likely to be accepted, yet still widely marketable to the furry market, but enable a AAA game to get on that bandwagon, I suppose.
Absolutely. I
Mm.
think that's part of the reason why, and I think this is a bit more of a blurry example. A movie like Zootopia was so successful
Yep.
because it taught good lessons. It was a good movie overall with a lot of good production, but it used the animals as a way to express something serious in a lighthearted manner, and I think
Yeah.
that's why that was so successful as well.
So you think game first, furry second, rather than furry first, game second. That would be your piece of advice to the game development industry on how best to appeal to the furry market.
Absolutely, because Dust and Elysian Trail was a wide hit with the furry community as well, and I mean, it being a good game drew in more of a crowd because if it had the furry stuff, but the game parts was kind of it wouldn't go anywhere.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that game? I'm not familiar with it. I've heard of it, but yeah.
Dust and Elysian Trail is a game where you wake up as a sword fighter with amnesia. He has someone that explains to him that, you know, because you were able to pull the classic, sword from the stone kind of thing, you are you need to try to help stop this evil. You go on this trek mostly to try to regain your memories, and you go along your way, finding the path of good, simply because it's your best chance of finding out who you are.
It's a very interesting
That's
concept. Cool. Do you have anything else to add to that, Jaraah?
No, that's pretty much covered.
Cool. Okay. So as a follow-on point regarding game developers and so on, aimed at the furry community, as LGBT acceptance has grown throughout the past few years, several games, such as Overwatch with Tracer and RuneScape with Armadillo, have had some of their characters come out. The reaction from this has been pretty mixed, with many feeling that what has been done is just a cheap effort to appear favourable to the public eye. As a supporter of what a cynical business manager at one of these companies may regard simply as a social-driven market trend. Aside from being the trailblazer and acting now, in a time where furry is still not widely accepted, what can game producers do to properly appeal to the furry market without coming across as insincere, as was the case with the LGBT market?
Ooh, man, that was
So in short, people feel that these characters are almost like, the token gay, the token lesbian character. How do we how do game producers not to make us feel like, oh, it's the token furry we just put in the game to appeal to that section market to make more money?
Well, something like that could possibly be integrated into a character creation, where you have options between various different species. Whereas you can choose it instead of having it being put in front of you and you have to use this type of situation.
I see. So instead of it being put in your face as, look, we have a gay character, aren't we cool and modern and hip? It's more of just a choice that's sort of passively in the game, and it's not sort of pushed on the player.
When you're given the option to choose between multiple different things, even if it's not necessarily a couple of options you really want, you look more favorably upon them instead of having just being stuck between 3 or 4 options you don't want.
Yeah, I see. So do you think... Go ahead, Cinnabunny.
I think a good thing to note that I've actually noticed in an anecdotal situation, I feel that it applies widespread, but I can't say for certain, is that when you have a character come out in that kind of situation, like Tracer, for example, people will be opposed to playing her from then on if they had been playing her. And a lot of those people will face not hatred, but resentment from the people that are either part of that community or are generally supportive of the community. I think those people that tend to hate on a character simply because of some personal bio fact, those people usually get alienated, and they usually end up a pretty lonely person after that. And then that's something that I have met a person again from probably about 3 years ago that ended up being a certain way like that against I don't remember the entire context because it was so long ago, but they ended up an extremely lonely person. I checked up on them. They said like I don't even have any friends anymore, and they were just a bitter person. And those people won't change. And I think it's just important to have something like that. And similar to what I said before, have it be a background aspect, not the main point, but something that gives normalization to the idea that people are going to choose to be the way that they are.
So, suppose that you are a game producer and you have a character like Tracer and, you want them to be a lesbian. You can't really come out and say, oh, hey, look, we have this lesbian character, because people will assume you've done it for economic reasons, for social reasons, to look good. So how do you do that? Do you think that you would just sort of, as part of the character's story that you build up, it should just sort of eventually become obvious that it's a lesbian without, actually saying, oh, yes, it's a lesbian character and making a big public deal out of it?
I think I wouldn't know the best answer on that, on exactly how to do that, but I think it should be established from the point that character is in existence. I think that if you were to look at it as this character has just been released and they give you a bio,
Yep.
tells that character's story. Somewhere in there they should have it covered, whether indirectly or directly. I think either way, as long as they have that fact out there about the character early on, it can be shown as this is how the character is. We didn't add it to the character to try to do this or this when it comes to
hmm
economic reasons.
Do you
This is just how we want to make the character.
do you not think if they were to make a new character which was openly gay or lesbian or whatever, or openly furry, whatever the case may be, that people would simply say, "Oh, well, that's why you're making a new character in order for economic gain." When I think about a biography that I would tell people about myself, or that as a gay person myself, my biography wouldn't include, "By the way, I'm a gay guy," because that's not what defines me. And perhaps that is what LGBT people take an issue to, that it's being pushed by the developer that I'm a lesbian and that defines me, and here, look, isn't that in your face? Whereas for people in our community, that's not the way it is. So perhaps that's why it comes across as insincere. I don't know.
I think an important thing to note is the fact that the style of game that Overwatch is, you don't really get to have that kind of coming to understand the character over time. You have the character as they are. You're given all the information about them, and you're supposed to understand what kind of character that person is from all that information. Unless that information is either noted, which can be indirect or direct, I wouldn't be able to say for certain which way is better. You
Okay.
wouldn't be able to know all about that character. If you're looking at a game like perhaps Skyrim, where you create your character, and then the choices that you do dictate what kind of sexuality your character will have, because you can choose to be in a hetero or homosexual relationship in that game, and it's not directed towards one more than the other.
hmm
You don't really have that kind of liberty in a game like Overwatch as a developer.
But the developers of Overwatch and RuneScape do very much have the liberty to create more lore for the character as they go. For example, League of Legends continuously has lore being written for it, but official lore. So whether or not in the game itself you require that lore to be able to play the character, I still think it's possible for the developer to spend time on that, and I think there are a lot of people who are really into it. I know some people who don't play League, but they love the lore. They can't get enough of the lore, even though they don't play the game. Yeah, it's an interesting one.
Absolutely.
Do you have anything else to add for that, Jaraah?
My favorite thing about LOL is the Timo memes.
Absolutely, yeah. Everyone hates standing on a mushroom and double kill. Save me. I play top lane Nasus main, so Timo, bane of my existence. That's brought us to the end of the questions which I had prepared for you guys. So let's now have a glance through what our live audience has been asking. So some of these questions are related to furries and the video gaming community, and some of them are just general questions. So let's start. Rockowl763 asks, what games do furries mostly play? Do furries even play Rocket League competitively? Well, Cinnabunny, why don't you tell Rockowl about Rocket League?
Well, I can say for certain that I, as well as quite a few people that I know, play it competitively. And in fact, I've just recently been informed that there is a Rocket League first server entirely dedicated just to it. And I'd have to double check exactly how many members they have, because I don't know off the top of my head. But it's in the hundreds. It's in the hundreds, and I know that they have some people that I knew very well when I was a bit bigger into playing it, and they are diamond level and champion level, which is pretty high up.
Did someone say we need a Rocket League section?
I feel like it might be coming off.
We actually we polled having a Rocket League section at least once before. I think we may have even polled it twice before. But if that's becoming more popular again, yeah, that can be done. For those of you who are listening live or shortly after when we've recorded this, we have a form available in the announcement section at the moment for you to fill out which games you'd like us to make a section for. We're planning on making new sections either at the end of January or the start of February, about a week and a half, 2 weeks from now. Our next, actually, Rockel's asked, what games do furries mostly play? I think that furries tend to be fairly representative of gamers as a whole, and so what games do people play? And the games that we have here, or at least on the multiplayer front, are a large percentage of that, because obviously we poll every game that people ask for, and the ones that are most popular we create sections for. So I would say the games that we have here, 15 game sections, are amongst the most popular, at least, that furries play. So next, Chance asks a question about how do you find the best times to play with your furry friends located around the globe because of time zone issues?
Well, generally, we just kind of talk amongst each other in the group that generally likes certain types of games and try to figure out what time most people are around. We try to plan out events when there's the most people for them, so we just kind of talk it out for the most part.
Yeah, it's just a matter of organization, I suppose.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, we communicate the same way anyone else does. We don't communicate in woofs and meows 24/7.
Some of us do.
Although, yeah, a few.
Oh whoa, oh woo.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna get fined, Craft. Next we have Excalibur asks, what features in a furry game do you think might represent the furry fandom as well as appeal to non-furries? So sort of related to what we discussed earlier. What do you think are the main features that, let's say, a AAA game should have that will enable great gameplay but still appeal to the furry fandom as a secondary market?
I would say one thing that could definitely help would be having customizations for various armors or clothing pieces. Because being able to customize your character in various different ways is something a lot of people love to do.
What do you think, Cinnabunny?
I think it kind of comes down similar to what I had said before. I think that it can be shown pretty well as long as it's not forced. It's not like like you're choosing your character's ears and in every single aspect of the character feels a little bit forced. Like, why do I care about this? I mean, I want to have like a character, and then I want to maybe choose what kind of armor he has. Similar to what Jaraah said, I want to customize stuff like that, because typically what gamers are going to want to do is customize the clothing and customize the colors of it and stuff like that. They're not going to really focus on the furry aspect of it.
So you would want customizability but not over customizability.
I think it's more so customization in the right aspects, something that appeals to the entire market.
Okay.
Outside of just furries.
Cool. Next we have Day Burley has asked, has being a furry ever affected your ability to play games with others who may not be furries, or do you entirely hide it from non-furry gamers?
As far as interacting with others, generally when it comes to playing games with others, I don't normally say too much about being a furry unless the subject comes up. Because it's not generally what's the base of the game.
Yeah. It's interesting for those of you who aren't in our voice chat. Jaraah's picture on Discord is a large fursuit wolf head, so I'm sure his non-furry friends are acutely aware, at least from his picture. And Cinnabunny's picture is of a rather cute bunny, so perhaps similarly.
When it comes to playing games, certain games that will affect more than others. Games like Rainbow Six Siege, which I mean, obviously I'm an admin for, and sometimes I'll get into a match and it will the people there will be so opposed to playing with someone that is furry that they will initiate a vote kick, which
Gosh.
takes the entire rest of the team to confirm to get the person kicked. So in a team of 5 takes 4 votes. And
So people are really that
that
opposed to playing with furries. Just
oh, absolutely, and they'll team kill too. They'll just
wow.
absolutely get themselves temporarily banned from the game for team killing in that
Gosh.
regard.
That's
And it
terrible.
is
That's absolutely
eh,
terrible.
it's something that everyone's gonna have to experience a little bit of. The same way that those same people that do stuff like that probably experience that in real life. It's something that's kind of a trickle down effect. They feel bad about it. They take it out on someone else. They don't think about it directly as I feel bad about it. I'm taking it out on someone else, but they just do it because that's what they've come to learn. Uh, unfortunately, is some sort of appropriate behavior.
Very sad.
Is to just
Very
kind of
sad.
attack what you.
Next, we have a question from Victor Lincolnpine, which I will adapt slightly. He asks about customizing your character to look more furry style. So I'm curious for you guys, what have you done to mod your character, or on whatever game it may be, to look like your persona or otherwise in a furry sense?
Well, when it comes to games that have furry-like characters, such as like Skyrim's Khajiit, generally I just kind of try to make it look close to my character as possible. But otherwise, it really isn't too much you can do apart from colorizations of clothing or like a marking on a tail or your ears or something like that.
So really for you, you'd want a little bit more than there currently is in most games.
Yeah, well, my character's not exactly something that 100 other people have the same interest in, so it's not a very big market for.
Yeah. I suppose once customizability gets past a certain point, you're going to almost have to be an artist in order to create your character how you want it to be if they make it too freeform.
Yeah, if games like Minecraft, you can actually make your own skin. That's pretty cool there.
Yeah. What about you?
For me, it kind of comes down to game kind of thing.
Mhm.
Similar to what Jaraah said in Skyrim, I picked the Khajiit. I didn't really customize it too thoroughly, but I kind of just picked it just because that was my interest.
Yeah.
And in a game like Smash Bros, where you do have anthropomorphic characters, I will pick them from time to time, but there are times where I'm just like, I'm going to play a character that's normal. I'm going to play Dr. Mario. He's not a furry, I think, but I mean, it's just a character I want to play. It doesn't encompass all of my choices when it comes to games and customization, but sometimes it will play a part. It kind of just depends on the game, really. It's
Cool. Interesting. Yeah. I suppose game to game, there's a lot of variation in what you can do, what the developers have implemented. Next, we have a question from Chocodile, which isn't really related to this. He mentions that he thinks fursuit prices might be a bit too much, and how might you fix it? I think that's just a consequence of the market supply and demand, and also the time it takes to make these things. Chocodile. If there are more producers, things will cost less. If things take less time, they'll cost less. So it's not really a thing that we can fix or that anyone can fix. Maybe 3D printing, when that comes out, I imagine the prices will drop. But this isn't really an issue we can control. So next question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jaraah.
Yeah, when it comes to the prices of fursuits, you look at the really cheap ones that you can find around from beginner makers, they're actually losing money because the material is not cheap.
Mhm.
And it does take a lot of time.
yeah.
So if you find like a used suit that fits your character for a reasonable price, you got yourself a deal.
The next question we have is from Viatara. Viatara asks, do you think that there will be more video games with anthro characters in the future?
With future game releases, there might be more, as the trend is generally more customizability. So there might be more options in regards to anthropomorphic characters or art and cosmetic things that might be of interest.
I think as well that there's probably going to be more, but I don't think it's going to be simply because it's going to be more widely accepted. I just think that the people that are currently doing it are going to start getting better and better and better until they can finally get to a point where they're releasing games that have furries in them, but again aren't the main theme enough to where the entire game is based around them. So someone that isn't a furry that would be opposed if it was the entire concept might be willing to play it if they hear it's good enough.
Yeah, it's a secondary, like we discussed earlier. Next, we have a question from Rosca, who asks, "What's your favorite games to play?"
My favorite games for the longest time was the Halo franchise until Xbox One and their "you must be connected to play" type situation.
Yeah.
Which basically ended my entire career of Halo, unfortunately.
Uh-huh.
I've been told that the next Halo will actually be on computer, but I haven't found anywhere to confirm that yet, which has actually got me kind of excited.
We're running a little short on time. Cinnabunny, do you want to?
Yeah. Top 5 favorite games is how I saw it worded for a brief second.
Yeah, but just top few games.
Defiance, Warframe, probably Pokemon, and I of all time that other ones I can't really think of. Those ones I just kind of have very strong memories for different reasons that I can't really go into in depth because it takes too much time.
We have an interesting question just coming from Caden. He says, "Playing as animals in games used to be very popular and a wide used mechanic employed by game developers. With the spread of the furry fandom into media, do you think that actually developers are doing this less because they don't want to be misjudged as providing for the furry community?"
I don't think it's so much that is the reason, as much as it was a concept that was used and perhaps didn't test out as well as they were planning for.
Okay.
I think there's a certain amount of that might be true in a case-by-case scenario, but I don't think that's stopping a lot of game developers that put out finished products that are so well quality that no one can really argue with that simple fact that there are characters that are anthropomorphic in them. So, for example, there's the Ratchet and Clank remake that came out. I don't remember exactly how long ago, or the newest installation that came out not too long ago. I think it's one of the best examples because it was so amazing to so many people that the fact that furries this and that didn't even strike many people's minds.
I suppose perhaps that comes back to the point that was raised earlier that perhaps furry isn't actually that mainstream at this point. So yeah, maybe it isn't particularly large impact in terms of how the media or the mass public may view a game. Just quickly to our audience, if you want to ask a question, please ask within the next 60 seconds. We will go through the questions that are in the chat and then finish up. So 60-second warning. Next question we have from Gaming God of War. Have you told any family or friends that you're a furry, and if so, how did they react?
My family loves the fact that I have a big derpy looking suit. Though I do have a brother who is kind of problematic sometimes about it, but I usually get him to hush pretty quick when I point out things that he's brought back from Japan.
Oh, is he quite into anime sort of stuff?
Yeah, when he was on deployment over there, he came back with a whole box full of stuff. He hushes pretty quick when I point it out.
What about you, Cinnabunny?
For me, my family does know. Only my closest family at the moment. It's not really out of fear that I keep it from the rest of my family. It's just, I mean, I haven't really been extremely fond of the outside groups of my family that it just hasn't really struck me as relevant to tell them. But they know about that, as well as the fact that um, I'm bisexual. It's something that in my family has luckily been very, very accepted, even though I know it's not the same for everyone, unfortunately.
Oh, it sounds like you've both had a rather positive experience with that. Yeah, that's definitely good. So Caden asks another question. Has gaming as a furry helped you find communities or friends you wouldn't have had if you were not a furry? I'm sure this is yes, but go ahead. Tell us about your experiences.
Absolutely. There are times where
Said you go first.
oh, sorry. There are times that I struggled to find the groups. A lot of times it was because, trolls would come into a furry group, and still to this day they do. And that's why a lot of groups had to keep under wraps when it comes to furry related groups, gaming or not. But I think overall it definitely has. It's kind of harder to fit in with a group of people that are a little less expectable, I guess, or predictable as far as how accepting they're going to be of that fact. Outside of it, and having a basis, especially one like this group, is enough of a confidence booster to be fine with not fitting into some other group.
Yeah. In life, it's all about finding those who treat you well and are worth your time, rather than worrying about those who don't. What about you, Jaraah?
You pretty much hit the nail on the head for me.
Yeah, absolutely. If I wasn't a furry, obviously I wouldn't have found you guys. You guys are my family. I view you as that very much so. So, yeah, obviously made a huge difference. Many communities, many friends I wouldn't have had if I wasn't a furry. Asuri asks, how do you think furry gamers compare to non-furry gamers in terms of how they chat and perform together in game? So I guess maybe he's referring to how friendly you guys may interact with one another, or sort of open-ended. I'm not sure.
I think what's in reference is what kind of overall interactions do you guys try to focus on, like game hardcore? Do you guys try to focus on just kind of having fun? I've experienced a lot of different types of friend groups, people that are super hardcore gaming, and then they kind of have the furry thing as their side, and then vice versa. Sometimes right in the middle. It's a bit all over the place, and I can't say at all that I think it's one more than the others.
Cool. Okay, so that's the end of the question submission. So I'm just going to ask the two that are left, and then we'll finish. Fiotara asks, are random furry encounters, meeting random furries in-game that you're not pre-made with, becoming more common?
I can't say I've really had any bump-ins lately that weren't already part of the group I'm in.
How about you, Cinnabunny?
I think it comes down to the game, but in a game like Rainbow Six Siege, we run into a furry almost every single day. If
Really?
not, then
Wow.
every other day.
Gosh.
Nearly on the daily or bi-daily. It's pretty crazy, but that's how we pulled in a lot of people to the server. Actually, people like Fusion Wolf and the others. I'm not going to say a bunch of names, so I shouldn't.
Wow.
But
Very cool. Very cool. Chocodile asks, if you had the money and the ability to do so, would you create a gaming cafe themed around the furry fandom?
that would be astounding.
Absolutely.
I
think from a business point of view, it's a resounding no. from a sort of that's a cool novelty. Yeah.
If you can make a novelty like that could go from convention to convention, that would be a hit, though.
Gosh, business operational costs there are huge. Transporting, I'm not sure. Wishful maybe, but yeah.
Wishful, but I think it's in the realm of plausibility. I think it's It's
Yeah.
in the possibility. I don't think if you had one dedicated location, I don't think it would ever really be able to get off the ground that high. But
Yeah.
I mean, you see crazier things. I think it's South Korea that they have, or I don't know what place it is. It's a country in Asia.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Taiwan or something, where they have this cafe where you go and get your food, and the food comes as like a waiting period before you get to go into this enclosed area and just pet a bunch of husky pups and stuff.
Ah.
And it's literally the entire shtick of the cafe itself, where it's just your food is second to meeting these puppies and
Yeah.
procedures and this and that, and it's possible.
Yeah, we have those in the UK. I don't think we have them for puppies, but I know we call them cat cafes, where they'll have like 20 cats and you just go and chill out, get a cup of coffee and pet the cats. And it's, yeah, new concept, I think the past sort of 3 or 4 years, but I think there's probably one in most cities at this point. Certainly taken
I have
off.
never heard of one.
Never heard of a cat cafe. Well, you're a wolf
I
person.
need one.
Could you imagine having like baby wolf pups at a cafe? God, they'd be adorable.
I would live there.
Gosh. Well,
It's in Thailand, by the way.
Thailand. Did you say?
Yep.
Oh, cool. So there's if ever you guys want to go to a husky pup cafe, apparently there is one in Thailand. You learn something new every day. I think that brings us to a close. So I just want to say a big thank you to our audience who are here, everyone listening on YouTube, and of course, massive thank you to Cinnabunny and Jaraah for making this podcast what it was. Very much appreciated. I hope you guys had fun chatting this evening. We will be here again for the live audience at 8 PM Eastern next Monday. Thank you again for attending, and I hope to see you next week.